A former speechwriter for President George W. Bush, and he is also a Fox News contributor, and good to have you with us. Mark, let's start with China, because I think that the trade issue is probably the biggest one. I want you to take a listen to one thing President Trump said, and then following it up with something Senator Lindsey Graham had to say about the possible difficulties for America going forward. Watch.
But remember this, when you say fair, China's been taking out of this country $500+ billion a year for many, many years. Many, many years. It was time to stop.
The Democrats for years have been claiming that China should be stood up to. Now Trump is, and we just got to accept the pain that comes with standing up to China. How do you get China to change without creating some pain on them and us? I don't know.
Mark, the rubber's starting to meet the road when it comes to this war on China.
Yeah, I mean, well, everybody agrees that China needs to be confronted. Everyone agrees that China is an economic predator that is stealing our American intellectual property and treating us unfairly and closing its markets to American businesses and forcing businesses to hand over their secrets, trade secrets, as a price for doing business in China, all of which is a violation of international trading rules and norms. But no one until President Trump has really made them pay a price for it. Trump is very copacetic about all of this, because he knows that despite the recent turbulence in the markets, the U.S. economy is strong. We got the lowest unemployment rate we've had in 50 years. Our biggest economic problem right now is that we have 1.6 million more job openings to be filled than we have unemployed workers. So we're in a pretty strong position. The Chinese are not in a strong position. Their economy is slowed, and some even say it's contracting. He pointed out they've lost 3 million jobs. So he's perfectly comfortable with letting them, he thinks we can ride out the trade war and absorb the pain a little bit better than they can.
And it's, for the Chinese, this is the first time in 27 years that they've had a pullback in their economy. And one of the biggest concerns that any Chinese leader has is when people lose jobs, they get restless, and instability is one of their biggest fears. Let me also ask you about something else. President Trump had been talking about the possibility of inviting Russia back into the G7 to make it the G8 again. Listen to President Trump on Russia, what he said about that.
I'm only thinking about the world, and I'm thinking about this country in terms of the G7, whether it's G7, G8. I think it would be better to have Russia inside the tent than outside the tent.
Now, Mark, that could be true, but what has Russia done to show that they deserve to be back into the G8?
Absolutely nothing. They have done absolutely nothing. Have they pulled back from Crimea? Have they stopped their violations of the INF Treaty? Have they stopped what they're doing in Syria? No, nothing. They don't deserve to be back in the G8. It should stay the G7. However, something else that Trump said there during that press conference, he was 100% correct on, which is that the reason they were kicked out is because they completely outmaneuvered Barack Obama. There was a PBS reporter who challenged him and even said to him he was lying. I mean, which was shocking in the middle of a press conference. He wasn't lying. The fact is Barack Obama failed to enforce his red line in Syria and turned to Vladimir Putin to give him a face-saving way to get out of it with this phony deal that Syria was going to give up its chemical weapons, which they didn't, because Trump had to enforce the red line twice after they used them. And then, after demonstrating that weakness, that was when President Putin invaded and annexed Crimea. So it was a direct result of that, and that's why they were kicked out of the G8. So President Trump was 100% correct that Obama was the reason why. And
a last question to you about this possibility of President Trump being the first president to possibly sit down with the Iranians here in New York just a month from, less than a month from now.
It wouldn't surprise me at all. He was the first president to sit down with the leader of North Korea. Why would Iran be any different? I mean, look, again, he's in a position of strength. The U.S., he said today, we're in no hurry. So he's not in a hurry to have a meeting. It's the Iranians who are desperate for a meeting. It's the Iranians who are desperate because our sanctions are absolutely crippling them. We've cut their oil imports by 88%. The oil sanctions have reduced their annual budget by 40%. Can you imagine a 40% reduction in the annual budget? That means they got no money to give to Hamas, no money to give to Hezbollah, no money for the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. So we are absolutely squeezing them right now. So Trump is perfectly happy. If they want to negotiate and denuclearize, he's happy to do that. If they want to live under the sanctions a little longer, he's happy with that as well.
And it's important to point out, he did say if there were to be a meeting, there are some certain, he didn't say benchmarks, but that's how I took it. There are certain things they're going to have to stop saying and doing if that's to happen. Marc Thiessen, a delight to see you. Thank you.
Always great to be on with you, Dana.
Thank you.